The thermometer on the dashboard of a taxi outside Dubai Mall reads a number that shouldn't exist for a human being to sit in. 60, not Fahrenheit. Celsius, that is 140 on the scale most of the world knows. And the driver, a man from Peshawar who has worked this city for 11 summers, tells you he has never seen the air do this. The steering wheel burns through his gloves. The asphalt underneath his tires is soft enough to leave a shoe print. Somewhere above him, glass towers engineered for a hotter planet than the one they were drawn on are starting to behave in ways their architects never modeled. This is the story of a city that built itself into the sun and then watched the sun call the bed. Let us be honest about what Dubai actually is before talking about what is breaking it. This is a place that decided, sometime in the 1990s, that the desert was a suggestion rather than a limit. They put an indoor ski slope in a shopping mall while it was 45 degrees outside. They grew grass and sand that hates grass. They ran air conditioning so aggressively that some office workers keep a cardigan at their desk in July. The entire civilization here runs on one quiet assumption that when the outside becomes unbearable, you simply go inside, and inside will always be cool. Pull that thread and watch what happens. The machine that keeps Dubai livable, the cooling, does not run on magic. It runs on electricity. Electricity in the Gulf mostly runs on natural gas turbines that have their own dirty little secret nobody puts on the tourism brochure. Those turbines lose power when the air gets hot. A gas turbine breathes air to burn fuel, and hot air is thin air, meaning less oxygen per breath, less thrust, and fewer megawatts exactly at the moment the whole city screams for more. The hotter it gets, the more everyone cranks the ack. The more everyone cranks the ack, the harder the grid strains. The harder the grid strains, the weaker its own power plants become. You see the trap. It feeds itself. 60 degrees is where that trap snaps shut. Now, I want to be careful here, because a number that dramatic deserves scrutiny rather than gasps. The official record air temperature ever measured on Earth sits at 56.7 degrees Celsius in Death Valley back in 1913, and plenty of scientists still argue that reading was flawed. So when we say Dubai touched 60, understand what is really happening. Air temperature and what your body actually feels are two different animals. The monster in the Gulf is humidity. When the Persian Gulf, a shallow and bathtub warm body of water, evaporates into already hot air, you get a heat index, or feels like number that is already blown past 60 in cities like Bandar Abbas across the water in Iran. Meteorologists there logged a heat index of 66 degrees in 2015. That is not a forecast. That happened. Dubai sits on the same stovetop. Here is the part almost nobody outside of climate labs understands, and it should genuinely frighten you. There is a limit to what a human body can survive, and it has nothing to do with willpower, hydration, or being tough. It is called the wet bulb temperature. Take a thermometer, wrap the bulb in a wet cloth, and spin it around in the air. The reading you get is the coldest temperature you can reach through sweating. Your body cools itself by evaporating sweat off your skin. When the wet bulb temperature hits 35 degrees Celsius, sweat stops evaporating. There is too much moisture already in the air. Your internal furnace has no exit. A perfectly healthy adult, sitting naked in the shade in front of a fan with unlimited water, will cook from the inside in about 6 hours. No exertion required, just breathing. For decades, scientists believed we would never actually reach that wet bulb 35 threshold in the real world. It was theoretical, a line on a graph. Then in 2020, a study out of the journal Science Advances went back through weather station data and found something that made the field go quiet. It had already happened, briefly, in spots along the Persian Gulf and the coast of Pakistan. The unsurvivable number was not decades away. It was in the rearview mirror. Guess which coastline Dubai sits on? Keep that in your back pocket as we walk through what a 60-degree Dubai actually looks like on the ground. Because the physics I just described is the reason the city cannot simply power through. There is a temperature beyond which powering through is not a strategy. It is a death sentence with a countdown. Start with the workers. Dubai's skyline was not built by the billionaires who own it. It was built maintained, cleaned, cooled, and served by roughly 3.5 million migrant workers, mostly from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and the Philippines. They lay the concrete. They wash the glass 40 stories up. They deliver food on motorbikes that turn into griddles under them. There is a law enacted years ago after mounting pressure called the midday break, which bans outdoor labor between 12:30 and 3 Aloso in the peak summer months. A decent rule on paper. 60 degrees does not respect a schedule. The heat does not clock out at 3:01. When ambient air hits numbers this extreme, the safe window collapses to almost nothing. A construction site that could operate mornings now cannot operate at all. The first thing that shuts down in a 60-degree Dubai is not the mall or the airport, but the invisible workforce. The men in blue jumpsuits at the labor camps in Sonapur and Al Quoz are sent back to dormitories where 8 men sometimes share a room, and the air conditioning is a window unit fighting a losing war. That is where the death count starts climbing. And it climbs in silence because heat rarely gets written on a certificate as the cause. Someone's kidneys fail. Someone's heart gives out. The official record says cardiac arrest. The real record, the one nobody signs, says the air killed him. Now the airport. Dubai International, or DXB, is the busiest international airport on the planet, moving some 90 million passengers a year through a single sprawling complex. Airplanes, like gas turbines, hate hot air for the exact same reason. Thin air means less lift. A fully loaded jet that could take off comfortably at 30 degrees might not be able to generate enough lift at 50, let alone 60. Airlines have a real hard number called the maximum takeoff temperature, and it is not negotiable. When Phoenix hit 48 degrees back in 2017, American Airlines simply canceled dozens of regional flights because their smaller jets were rated to fly only up to 47.8. The planes were not broken. The sky was just too thin to hold them. Push Dubai to 60, and the flagship carriers face a brutal choice. Fly with fewer passengers and less fuel to lighten the load, which wrecks the economics, or do not fly at all during the hottest hours. The world's great connecting hub, the place where a flight from London to Sydney stops to breathe, starts stuttering. A hub that stutters does not just delay Dubai. It ripples out to every city that routes through it. Feel the shape of this yet? Every system that made Dubai possible turns out to have a temperature written into it, a ceiling. The city is now pressing its head against every ceiling at once. Let us talk about the roads, because this gets almost cinematic. Asphalt is a petroleum product, and petroleum products soften with heat. At extreme temperatures, the road surface starts to rut, shove, and literally flow under the weight of traffic. Tires blow out at a horrifying rate. The rubber cannot shed heat fast enough. Internal pressure spikes, and they let go at 120 kilometers an hour on Sheikh Zayed Road, the 12-lane artery that is the spine of the whole city. Traffic accidents spike. Emergency response slows because ambulances are stuck in the same superheated gridlock as everyone else, and the paramedics inside are wearing gear that traps heat against their bodies. Then there is the thing sitting under everyone's feet that nobody thinks about: fiber optics. Data centers. The internet's physical body runs hot on a good day, and the server farms keeping Dubai's banks. Stock exchange, ports, and smart city systems alive need aggressive cooling of their own. When the grid strains and the temperature climbs, data centers are among the first to throttle down to protect hardware. A modern city losing its data does not just get inconvenienced. Payment systems hiccup. Traffic lights running on network timing fall out of sync. The invisible nervous system starts misfiring. I keep coming back to one image: a city of gleaming towers sealed against the desert, where every single tower is a lung that needs to exhale heat into the surrounding air to keep breathing. That is what an air conditioner does. It does not destroy heat, it moves it. It takes the heat from inside your apartment and dumps it outside. Multiply that by a few million units running flat out, and you create what scientists call the urban heat island. The city literally makes itself hotter by cooling itself. At night, when the desert around Dubai should drop to something bearable, the city stays furnace warm because all that pumped out heat has nowhere to go. Concrete, glass, and asphalt soak up the day and radiate it back all night long. Cooling makes the heat, which demands more cooling, which makes more heat. There is that loop again. It is the same monster wearing a different face. Why did nobody see this coming? Because the title says nobody saw it, and I think that is only half true. The scientists saw it. They have been publishing this for 15 years. A 2015 study in Nature Climate Change modeled the Persian Gulf specifically and warned that under a high-emissions future, parts of this exact region would cross the human survivability threshold by the end of the century. El-Fatih El-Tahir at MIT, one of the authors, said the words out loud that the Gulf could become a place where, on the worst days, being outside is simply lethal. That was 2015. That was the warning shot. What nobody planned for was the speed. Climate models talk in decades. Cities plan in decades. A heat dome, which is a stagnant high-pressure system parking over a region and trapping heat like a lid on a pot, does not operate on a decade. It operates on a Tuesday. It shows up, settles in, and turns a normal, brutal Gulf summer into something off the charts in the span of days. The gradual future arrived early, wearing the costume of a single weather event, and infrastructure quietly built for the old normal met the new normal without warning. Dubai is not helpless, which is the maddening part. This is one of the richest, most technologically ambitious cities that has ever existed. It has resources most heat-stricken places can only dream of. Money buys you cooling, and cooling is exactly the thing that stops working when the whole system tips over. You cannot air condition the outdoors. You cannot buy your way out of thermodynamics. Wealth is a fantastic shield, right up until the moment the threat is the temperature of the air itself. And then all that wealth does is buy you a slightly better view of the problem. Let us zoom out to the water, because the Gulf itself is part of this trap in a way that ties everything together. Dubai gets almost all of its fresh water, including tap water, showers, and the ice in your drink, from desalination, from ripping the salt out of seawater. It is one of the most energy-hungry processes humans do at scale, and it dumps a super salty, super hot brine back into the Gulf. The Gulf is shallow and nearly enclosed, so that brine does not flush out easily. The sea gets saltier and warmer over time. A warmer sea evaporates more, pumping more moisture into the air and pushing that lethal wet bulb number even higher. The way the city gets its water is slowly cooking the air the city has to breathe. Everything connects. Everything feeds the fire. What actually happens when a city like this crosses the line? We got a preview, oddly enough, not from heat but from water in April 2024, when Dubai got a year and a half of rain in a single day and the whole city drowned. Roads became rivers. The airport flooded. Cars floated. Tesla owners watched their vehicles bob down the street. The lesson from that day was not really about rain, but about brittleness. A city optimized so completely for one narrow set of conditions has almost no give when reality steps outside the lines. Dubai was built for hot and dry. It handled one wet day like a catastrophe. Now imagine the version of the crisis it is actually engineered against, which is extreme heat, turning up to a level the engineers underestimated. The shutdown would not be dramatic in the Hollywood sense. There is no single explosion. It is a cascade. First, the outdoor workers stop. Then the flights get thin. Then a substation somewhere trips because the demand curve went vertical, and the gas turbines were already sagging in the heat. When a substation trips, a neighborhood loses power. When a neighborhood in a 60-degree city loses power, it loses air conditioning. A sealed glass apartment in that heat, without AC, becomes a convection oven in under an hour. People do not have time to wait for it to come back. That is when calls flood into emergency lines, reaching an ambulance system already stuck in gridlock, already stretched, and already fighting the same heat killing the callers. That is the real shape of a heat disaster, not fire. Silence, and then a flood of people who all need help in the same window, all for the same reason, all because the one thing everyone depended on, cool air on demand forever, turned out to have a temperature written on it after all. I do not say any of this to be a doomsayer. I say it because the pattern is bigger than Dubai, and Dubai is just the place where the pattern shows up first and cleanest. The Gulf is the front line, but the wet bulb monster is coming for places nobody expects. The 2020 study found near lethal readings not just in the Middle East, but in northwest Mexico and even briefly in the southern United States. Jacobabad in Pakistan has already crossed the survivability line more than once. Chennai, parts of the Indus Valley, and the coast of the Gulf of Mexico are the next dominoes. Dubai is simply the flashiest one, the one with the tallest towers and the biggest promises, making it the perfect place to watch the assumption fail in real time. Here is what gets me. Dubai's entire identity is built on the idea that the desert can be beaten with enough ambition and enough money. The world's tallest building, islands shaped like palm trees dredged out of the sea. That indoor ski slope with snow falling in the desert, acting as a middle finger to the climate itself. It worked spectacularly for 30 years. The whole city is a monument to the belief that nature is a problem to be engineered away. 60 degrees is nature asking for a rematch. The terrifying, humbling truth underneath all of it is that you cannot out-engineer the wet bulb. You can build a taller tower. You cannot make sweat evaporate into air that is already full of water. That is not a technology problem waiting for a smarter startup. It is a wall built into the physics of being alive, of being a warm mammal that cools itself with water on its skin, and no amount of Emirati wealth changes the number 35. The people who suffer first will not be in the penthouses of the Burj Khalifa with backup generators and private cooling. It will be the man from Peshawar in the taxi, the men in the labor camps, and the delivery riders melting into their motorbikes, the exact people who built the city and keep it running, whose names never appear on the buildings they raised. That is the cruelest joke in this whole thing. The heat comes for the servants of the machine long before it comes for the masters. The next time you see a photo of Dubai, the impossible skyline, fountains, yachts, and the shimmering fantasy of a city that conquered the desert, I want you to remember the number on that taxi dashboard. Remember that the fantasy has a ceiling measured in degrees, and the ceiling gets lower every single summer while the room fills up with more and more people who have nowhere else to go. The desert was never conquered. It was only asleep, and it is a very light sleeper. Watch the thermometer. The story of Dubai at 60 degrees is not really a story about one city having a bad week. It is a preview. A dress rehearsal for a much larger stage, playing out first in the place that tried hardest to pretend the rules did not apply to it. The rest of us are in the audience right now, but the same physics is walking up every coastline on Earth. It does not care how tall you build, how much you spend, or how deep you sink the air conditioning. It only cares about the water in the air and the water on your skin, and the exact temperature where one